Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Forage to Foods. I'm your host, Justin Nodd, and we're here with the Truffle Mac 33. So we used three types of cheeses in this. Some of my favorites here, the Prima Donna Matura, a nice aged cheddar, as well as a smoked Gouda. The three mushrooms of choice were the lion's manes, what we're going to use as a topping for the mac and cheese, beautiful Grifola frondosa, or the hen of the woods maitake, as well as the shiitakes. Now this can all be done ahead of time, and that being the shredding of everything. We're going to shred all the cheese to about 6 cups worth. You can see your nice gradient of cheeses, left to right, light to dark. For the shredding of the lion's manes, you're going to want to make sure that you have these really finely shredded. You don't want to have any mushroom bite, or maybe you do. But for this purpose, we're going to want it to be nice and golden brown and crispy, since we are using it as a topping. So we are going to shred, 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 and keep shredding some more. It will look like you have a lot, but this will cook down, so don't worry if it looks like you have more than you're going to need. Go ahead and put this in a bowl. We're not going to need it for a little bit, so you can go ahead and just put it on the side. Next, we're going to get to that Grifola frondosa. We're going to do pretty much the same thing, but with this one, we're not going to need to shred it nearly as much. A couple larger chunks ain't going to hurt. This is a pretty good texture for it. Like I said, it can be finer, you can make it a little bit bigger. This is all going to get cooked up and thrown in with the pasta. For the shiitakes, we're just going to de-stem them. And then we're just going to chop them longwise and then dice them once across. Slice and dice. Going to preheat the oven to 350 and start getting that water boiling for the pasta. It's time to get cooking. For an oil, I used an MCT oil infused with lion's manes, but you can just use butter or a little bit of vegetable oil or olive oil as well. Once the water is to a rolling boil, you're going to want to add the pasta and return it to boil until pasta is just about al dente. We're going to be cooking the pasta yet a little bit more in the oven, so you don't want to overdo it. We're going to toss a little bit of olive oil over the noodles and give them a toss to help them from sticking while they're cooling, because we will be adding them to the cream sauce here in a little bit. Let's get started making that cream sauce. First thing you want to do is melt down that 6 tablespoons of butter. Add your 1/3 cup of flour, and it's time to whisk away. You're going to want to whisk in, make sure no clumps, while making sure you also don't burn the butter. Don't burn the butter. Don't burn the butter. That's probably the hardest part. Just don't burn the butter. Keep whisking until it starts to get golden brown, and you start to see little bubbles forming. You're going to want to add your milk in slowly. I needed a hand to start here, and I started a little bit before I showed what I was doing, but I add a little bit in and stir, and then add a little bit more in and stir. You don't want to get your cream too hot. You don't want to get your butter mixture too cold. So keep adding a little bit and stirring until it's well incorporated. And once it's all in there, you're just going to keep stirring until it thickens. Once it thickens, time to add the cheese. And you can see it's slightly thickened here as that cheese just kind of sits on top before it melts in. It's not really thick, it's just thickened a little bit. The flour and the butter kind of made a roux for the cream sauce. So just melt in about 2 cups at a time. Starting with 2, melt in. I'm going to toss 2 more in, leaving the last 2 cups, 1 to 2 cups. Sometimes I add a little bit more cheese in, but leaving the last 1 to 2 cups for the topping layers inside the baked mac and cheese. Alright, Alright, we got the cheese and cream together. Now let's add the truffle. This black truffle came from Australia. It is a winter truffle. Here it's August. And yeah, winter truffle from Australia. We're going to microplane this down. And we are going to microplane quite a bit of this down, because we love truffle. We are going to save a little bit for garnishing on top, a little bit to microplane, as well as a little bit to slice. You can just add that truffle right into the cream sauce. Stirring to incorporate, make sure you break up any of those chunks. It does like to stick to itself when you microplane it like that, so give it a good whisking once more, incorporating that in before we get everything together. Now I cooked these mushrooms the same time that I was doing the cream sauce. It was kind of hard to show both of them at the same time, but that's kind of the idea. I want to get the timing done, cook the cream sauce and these mushrooms together because they're both going into the pasta at the same time. So you're going to want to cook all the moisture out by cooking on a high heat for a little bit. Throw in your salt and pepper, and now throw in a little bit of garlic powder as well. Just give that a stir around. We're not going to add any butter to this because it is going to be going into the cream sauce, so it's not really necessary. Throw in those mushrooms. Make sure you get them all in there. Go ahead and throw in the cream sauce as well. Never hurts to give it a good stir. Just one last time. Ah, so good. That's some creamy goodness. Make sure you butter the sides of your baking pan. You don't want this sticking in there eventually when we're all done. This is cheesiness, so it will burn. So make sure you get them nice and buttered. We're going to put it about half full before adding a layer of that leftover cheese. That'll give it a nice visual pool when we're eating a little bit later. Then we're going to layer on the rest of the half, and then adding just a little bit of cheese that we had left over in the bowl there on top before pouring the rest of that cream sauce on it. We're going to put that in the oven for 30 minutes at that 350. So we got the mac and cheese baking. In the meantime, we're going to make this topping layer. We're going to start off by doing the same thing we did with the previous mushrooms, getting this water out of the mushrooms. So we're going to put it on high heat, cook it off for a little bit here, and just give it a toss around. Now this we are going to be adding butter to, because we're going to want it to get a little golden brown, especially when we add those panko breadcrumbs in. So once you get that moisture cooked off, a little bit of salt and pepper in there, add the butter, melt that in, and then add your cup of panko breadcrumbs. You're going to want to stir this around a little bit until you get a little bit of golden brown forming. And then add your cheese. I like cheese, so add a little bit more than I would recommend. But just a slight shaving of cheese on top will give you a nice golden brown effect as well. You're going to want to carefully layer this beautiful topping on top of your mostly baked macaroni and cheese. It will be going back in for another 10 minutes yet, just to get a nice incorporation of the two layers, as well as a nice browning on the top layer of breadcrumbs and mushrooms. I did add that butter on top. That's another thing that's going to help with creating a nice golden brown color. About 10 to 15 minutes, like I said, just a little bit more time. You're going to see a little bit of bubbling of the cheese and a nice brown color forming on top. Right about there. So you're going to want to let this rest. It is nice cheesy goodness. It's all gooey. The longer you let it rest, the better it's going to set. So about 10 minutes, the longest 10 minutes ever. You're going to let this sit and just solidify a little bit. Alright, that looks like it's ready for eating. Don't forget to top it with a little bit more of a truffle garnish, a little bit of them sliced truffles as well, and enjoy. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.